there's a spiritual battle that's happening, and that first prayer, like a real prayer that someone's ever heard, who knows what power that holds in their life. Welcome to Discovering Discipleship podcast. Please put your phones on Do Not Disturb. There we go. It's done. Welcome. My name is David, and this is my co-host. What are you?
Host the most.
Are we co-hosts? Am I the host and you're the co-host, or are we co-hosts? How does that work?
Space Ghost, coast to coast. I'm like Space Ghost. You're like Zorak.
Good. Nice. All right. Well, today we are here at Discovering Discipleship podcast, and we are talking about discipleship.
That's it.
Like every week. But what we like to do is we like to start with a question of the day. Okay?
I'm ready.
Quatad.
Yeah, question of the day. And what's the point of the question of the day? Is it just to stir it up, be funny?
Yeah, it's just to get people's ears, get them warmed up, It's like the stretch. People's ears. Yep.
Like Paul talks about.
Yep. Yeah, if you proof text, we're like, tickle people's ears. That's us.
Sounds like a good idea.
So I want to know, how did you break your ankle in Germany?
First of all, I didn't break my ankle in Germany.
Injure your ankle?
What sprained my ankle.
You sprained your ankle.
Sprained my ankle. And
how did that happen?
Well, see, there was a soccer tournament.
Oh, so you were playing in the soccer tournament.
I didn't finish my story.
Oh,
There's a soccer tournament, a bunch of Arabs.
Okay.
And, we were all on the field.
Yep.
And I was walking.
Yeah.
And then some kid kicked me the ball, and I kind of kicked it back.
Yeah, you gave him the old, hey, here you go, the old messy shuffle.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, before I knew it, I was on the ground, Davey. I don't know, I stepped in a gullet. What's it? I stepped in a hole. There was no hole. I have no idea what I did.
And you just rolled your ankle?
I rolled it right in half.
Yep.
And then David probably laughed at me.
Well, you went to the medic.
I went to the medic.
And I was laughing at you.
And the medic was like, this is serious. Don't laugh at your friend.
And I was like, it's not serious. He's an idiot.
And then it was like...
Yep. It swelled up. It was like you had a basketball in your ankle.
Yeah, well, that's what... I thought we were playing basketball. That's kind of that was part of the problem.
So this is a two-part question.
Okay.
Question of the day. It's
question number one, how did I make a fool of myself in Germany?
How did you twist your ankle?
Walking. Okay.
And the second question is, so you would think, so Bill and I, we travel a lot together. And so there's a lot of, we're in the airport. And Bill you just outpace me in the airport all the time. And I was hoping, once you sprained your ankle, I could keep up. And I still could not keep up with you in the airport. So the follow-up question is, how/why do you move so fast in the airport?
I don't think I move...
You move so fast.
But I don't think I move any faster in the airport than I do in real life.
Oh, that's a good... Oh, that's like a whole...
But...
So
first of all,
why does Billy move? Why do you move so fast?
You have to activate airport mode. I mean, I don't know if you knew that.
Put on airport mode.
It's different from airplane mode.
Okay.
Airplane mode is when your device doesn't work.
Okay. Airport mode is when you're
it's business time. It is go time. I got to get through security. Got to get to the gate.
Yeah.
Don't have time to talk. I'm not going to look to the left. I'm not going to look to the right. I'm going to stay focused.
That's in the Bible.
That's in the Bible. We might even talk about that today.
That's true.
I'm not going to be distracted. And then, so that's why. And how? It's on the hips.
All the hips.
You know? Speed walking.
See, because
you can't have both feet off at the same time.
No.
Then you're running.
Yeah.
I don't run.
Yes,
walk
that's
fast.
true. Well, that's not safe. It's not safe to run in an airport.
No.
Unless you're OJ.
That's
Remember
how you
that
get
commercial?
attacked by a dog.
Do you remember when OJ had that commercial where he ran through the airport?
OJ? Like murderer OJ?
Yeah. Well, he was never convicted. Yeah.
Didn't realize there was a conspiracy podcast.
Yeah. So the reason I asked the question was I was hoping that you were going to say it's not that I move fast, it's that I move slow.
I would never say that.
Yeah. So, but no. So today we are talking about, and this is my segue.
Okay, I'm ready.
Prayer walking. See what I did there?
I do that fast too.
You see? Billy's like, we're going prayer walking for an hour. I'll be back in 30 minutes.
That's it.
So today we're talking about prayer walking, and I would like to know, so what is prayer walking? So you're walking and you're praying.
Prayer walking, it combines two things: praying and walking.
Okay.
No, but prayer walking, all joking aside, because people might think that that's all it implies. Prayer walking, you walk and you pray. But prayer walking specifically, I would say, is about saturating an area in prayer while also simultaneously looking to see if God is on the move, So it's not just praying. It's also maybe there's someone who's, you run into them on their while they're walking to the mailbox and you say hi, you try to strike up a conversation and kind of get a pulse on the community at the same time.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this episode and we're just going to kind of break down what is prayer walking, like where do we see it in the Bible, and then maybe some like how-tos, like how do you prayer walk? Like what does it look like?
Sure.
And maybe some safety tips, how to not twist your ankle.
Bring a buddy
in case you do twist your ankle and you're just laying in the street. Oh!
Get a go bag. Bring a go bag with you.
Yep.
Or don't bring a backpack.
So we're going to take a quick break and hope you stick around, and we are going to learn about prayer walking today. Welcome back. Thank you. I'm glad you stuck around. I'm glad you didn't leave, Billy. I was afraid when I brought up your story about a Germany incident, you were going to get mad at me.
Well, how am I supposed to get up? I got this sprained ankle.
So let's talk about our first experience prayer walking. We were in Southeast Asia. I think that was kind of my first experience. I don't know if that was. Did you
try to think? That would be my first experience prayer walking the way that we now teach it.
Yeah. So Luke 10, we would call this like a Luke 10 trip or Luke 10 experience of, Jesus sends out the disciples and he says, go into a town, don't look left and right, don't pack a bag. You're just going to go. You're looking for a person of peace. If they open up their home to you, stay and share the gospel. That's kind of the summary of it.
Okay.
And when we were in Southeast Asia, we went, and I love this story because like the whole time in my head, we knew that we were going to be going to this island to go and pray and try to find, people to share the gospel with. And I kind of thought that the island would know we were coming.
Yeah.
And it turns out our host, our friend, our missionary friend, doesn't call ahead. Well, he does now. But in the time when we went, probably 10 years ago, we literally showed up on this island and he was like, go and pray and find a place to stay. And like the sun was like setting.
Sure. Yeah.
And so without getting into too much details of that, Bill and I, we just start walking down the street and praying and, and on this like, this remote island, and they see two guys like Bill and I walking down the street. It was not hard to find a place to stay. No. People are like,
of course I want those guys. I want these guys to
look at these guys.
Come to my house.
Yep. So, but that's what we did. We were praying and we were just saying, Lord, show us somewhere that's going to open up. Someone's going to open up their home to us. And then as we're in the home, we're praying and trying to get opportunities to share. So that was kind of like our first introduction into prayer walking.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that version was a real, specific and application of Luke 10, like David was saying in Luke 10, Jesus is sending out the 72. He gives them authority and he basically says, hey, I'm going to be going to these towns. So you go ahead of me, and you kind of pave the way. And in that day and age, in the culture, and you see this throughout the scriptures, someone would go to the town square and then you'd be like, hey, this guy's in the town square. Like, why don't you come stay at my house tonight, and show them hospitality. And they were using that in Luke 10 as like a barometer to see who might be open to hearing spiritual things. Now, obviously, where we were in Southeast Asia, that culture still exists, where like people would be like, oh yeah, come over and stay at my house, even though you're a stranger and I don't know you. It's part of the culture. Like I can't imagine that happening in New Jersey, but But yeah, that was a really powerful thing to step out in faith like that. Is definitely has shaped, I think, the way that both of us view that passage and what the Lord might want to do as we go out in faith.
Well, and you say, like, I don't see that, playing out in New Jersey where someone would open up their home to us. I would agree with that. But we're bringing those principles that we learned here to New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about maybe not so much like the practical implications, because I want to kind of practically go through that at the end. But let's talk about like the spiritual, what's at play spiritually as we're prayer walking. So I was thinking of the passage in 2 Kings with Elisha when he says, they're in a battle and he, prays to the Lord to show him the the spiritual battle that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk maybe a little bit about like the spiritual battle that's going on when we are prayer walking. So it's not just like we're just getting out and exercising with our friends and we're going to pray.
Sure.
Like there's a spiritual battle that's happening as we're prayer walking. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that, when you think about prayer walking, there's going to be some debate on this, about the spiritual realm and all that kind of stuff. But, two things come to my mind from the Old Testament. One is the passage you mentioned, 2 Kings 6. And I think the other one would be just the idea of walking around Jericho, what I mean, as they go for those days walking around until the final day. And we don't normally bring trumpets with us, but I think there's a sense in which you're preparing the soil, right? Even in Luke 10, they go and if they're preparing the way, John the Baptist goes out preparing the way. And so I think it's the idea in part where Paul says in Ephesians 6 that our prayers are tearing their weapons against divine strongholds and that we are tearing these things down, so to say. And so I think the spiritual side of prayer walking is to realize that there are, for lack of a better way of saying it, geopolitical spiritual powers at play. And when we pray, we are waging war against those powers. And I know one of the things that we often will say to people, when you prayer walk and you walk by a house and you're praying for the people who live there, I'll often remind people that, you might be the only person in the world who's praying for this person specifically, and you think about that God has prepared people. And God is preparing people, and we're praying that God's going to lead us to those people who he has prepared, and he's going to be preparing soil and removing hindrances and all those kinds of things. And we should believe that there's power in prayer as we stand in the gap on behalf of people, and we actually pick up the sword of the Spirit to wage that fight, so to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just good to kind of talk about that aspect of it because I think we look at like Jehovah's Witnesses, they're going out in twos and they're going door to door, or Mormons or whatever. And you're like, well, I don't want to just like, and I think there is this like, trying to think of like the right word for it. I want to say playful, but there is just kind of like this, oh, well, we're going to go prayer walking. And it's just like, it's just me and Bill. We're going for a walk and we're just going to sing some worship songs.
Sure.
And like, it's just like a fun thing to do, or, we're going to walk the dog together or whatever. But it's like to really have this mindset of like, this is a spiritual battle that we're going into. And if this is, if there is an enemy presence in this part of town, that there's just, whether it be drugs or whatever,
homelessness.
Yeah. And it's like, there's like a spiritual oppression here, and we're kind of coming in, like if we look at like military terms, as like that first wave of people that are like, we're like doing recon and we're like, all right, we're going to pray for this area and we're going to start the spiritual battle. This is kind of like you said, like tilling the soil.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was, I don't remember if it was John Piper or someone else who basically said that, prayer, it was Piper and Let the Nations Be Glad. He says prayer is the wartime walkie talkie to like basically radio back to base, that like you got to send in the carpet bomb, I mean, that kind of idea. And so I think when we think about it from that perspective, it's like our prayers are tenderizing the soil and the culture, the climate of people's hearts and their homes, so that we are making a way for the word of God to be proclaimed.
Yeah. So as we look at the spiritual aspect, what the Bible says, I love that. It's when John prepares the way. He's making paths straight to the Lord. Like that's the role we're playing in this. So I think it's good that we look at that first as like the importance of prayer walking. So we're gonna take a quick break and then we'll come back and let's look at some like 5 steps of like the practical how to prayer walk.
Sure.
Does that sound good, Billy?
Sounds good to me.
You gotta run, go do anything?
Nope, this got this bum ankle.
All right, welcome back. We are gonna look at prayer walking and how to. I think like if we were to do this, I bet the YouTube thumbnail is gonna be like 5 tips to level up your prayer walking experience.
But like me walking like an Egyptian.
Yeah. Oh, nailed it. Thumbnail. We just wrote the thumbnail.
Yeah,
right there. So, all right. So let's go through and we'll just kind of talk about it. So the first tip we give, and we if you go to our church, Revolve Church, we ordered some cards. Then they'll be available probably by the time this podcast is out, with these tips on it. So the first tip is go in groups. Why do we go in groups?
Well, in Luke 10, we see Jesus sending people out by twos, but we really see this as a principle that Jesus never sends people out by themselves. I mean, even to go get a donkey, Jesus sends people out in groups. And I think that, some of the benefits, accountability, you're always, it's easier to make excuses when you don't have somebody else there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know what, it's kind of drizzling out. I think I'll stay. Or
yeah.
The other thing is just boldness. I think that we tend to be bolder when we're with other people than when we're by ourselves. It's easy to be timid. I often compare it to like if you go to do a workout, like if you have like a CrossFit workout that you're going to do and you're by yourself, it's so easy, unless you're really disciplined.
Yeah.
It's easy to be like, you know what? I think 3 rounds instead of 5 rounds is adequate. I'm pretty toast. But when you have somebody else with you, you're more motivated to keep going. So that, so accountability, a boldness, motivation, I think are all really intrinsic. What other things come to your mind?
I think that when we are out prayer walking, so to kind of like put some skin on that, we're in a neighborhood and we're walking down the street and maybe we see a guy, watering his lawn or whatever, and we're praying
by hand.
Yeah, we are, we're praying for this neighborhood and we're praying for this man. If I was by myself, I could easily talk myself out of like, that guy probably doesn't want to be.
Can't hear me over the hose.
Over the hose, and he's sprinkling. He might spray me with the hose. I don't want to get involved in that. But it's like when I'm with Bill or we're with one another, there's this like, all right, we're going to talk to this guy and we can kind of like, because it's, I would be, and maybe I don't want to speak for both of us, but for me, it's like, it's intimidating to just go up to someone and be like, hey, can I pray for you? Is there something?
Or say something really cheesy.
Yeah.
You know what else needs to be watered?
Yeah.
The seed of the gospel.
Yeah.
In your heart.
The water that you have will not satisfy,
that's right.
But I have the
gift living
of
water.
Living water. Yeah. That's the line we usually open with. So you can steal that. You can steal that line. But, and then I think, like practically, if you are talking to someone and maybe you're sharing your testimony or you're sharing the gospel, like if there's 2 of you, it's the opportunity for one person to be engaging with that person, and then the other person can just continue to be praying. Like, so if Bill is engaging with someone and he's sharing his testimony or he's sharing the gospel or something like that, I can just be standing 2 feet away and I'm just praying in my head, Lord.
Not out loud. Not awkwardly out loud. Like, Lord.
Yeah.
No, don't be a weirdo about it.
Don't be a weirdo. I mean, that should be like on the back of the card. We have all these tips, and on the other one, it just says, don't be a weirdo.
Don't be a weirdo.
Yeah. So, but just going in groups, it's like it, and it's safety too, especially, if you're like in a neighborhood or something. Like I was thinking of a time we were prayer walking in Greece. I think we were in Thessaloniki. I don't know if you remember this, but like we were prayer walking, going around a park, and there was like this group of guys that started gathering, and I like literally like in my spirit I was like, I feel like things are going south right now, and it was like this kind of like mob started to gather, and it was like let's get out of here, like I don't think it's safe for us to be here anymore. And so I think there's a sense of safety too. You kind of when you're in groups of two. So yeah.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah. So the second thing is eyes open. So we're praying with our eyes open.
You feel like this should be a no brainer.
You think, but the not like, I don't really think people are going to walk around with their eyes closed and pray like before dinner, but just pray with your eyes open, like pay attention to what's going on around you. Like if you're, you see a house and it has a bunch of toys in the yard and, whatever, it's like, well, maybe that's a house, that's a family. So I'm going to pray for, those kids and, safety in schools. And, you might see a house that's really run down and it's like, well, maybe this person is in need of employment or something. It's like, we're trying not to like typecast or like be stereotypes, but you're just paying attention. You're not just walking down the street being like, Lord, be with this neighborhood.
Yeah,
Lord,
you
be
walk
with this
past
neighborhood.
the school.
Yeah.
You pray for the kids in the school and the teachers.
A police station.
Right.
So
I
think I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just like, pay attention to what's going on around you and look. And if you see someone, you can go and engage that person. But just being aware of what's going on. And then I think, the passage where it says that Jesus looked out among the crowds and he had compassion because they were sheep without a shepherd. And it's like just looking out and having compassion on a broken world.
Yeah.
So,
and I think asking God to give you the eyes to see that kind of stuff, because often we're so busy as, let's say you walk the dog, you're often so busy. You're like, texting people, you're doing Duolingo, you're listening to a podcast, whatever it might be, that you don't pause enough to just worship the Lord. You see a bird's nest and it makes you think about how his eye is on the sparrow, or, you see a beautiful, flower or something like that. And so it might not even always be an intercessory type thing. It might just be that the Lord redirects you to worship him and to be thankful and to, notice something that's going to give you a deeper affection for him as well. Or one of the things that I was thinking about is realizing that there's people of influence, there's places of congregation, like where I walk the dog every day, there's one business who's networked all over the country, and it's like praying for their salvation because they have a large web, and there's another business where people gather, and a local brewery where they gather, and it's like, well, what if the gospel invaded that place? And so just realizing that you think differently as you just take a moment to actually ponder those things and be aware of your surroundings, for sure.
Yeah. And that's one of the, another kind of tip we talk about when we teach prayer walking is praise. It doesn't always have to be intercessory prayer, but praising God, like you said, if there's, you see something that's beautiful, praise God that, he is on the throne. He is the king ruling. Like we talked about last, Sunday. We are in the kingdom of already, but not yet. And, praising God for the work that he's done, praising God for, if you do have an encounter and you get to pray with somebody, or, it says that the apostles prayed when they were persecuted and, they rejoiced that they were persecuted like Jesus. So if, that man does spray you with the hose, you can praise God that we get to, be in the suffering.
Praise God.
So praise, and then also listening. What you started to kind of touch upon that, but the idea of, taking time to listen to the Holy Spirit. What might that look like?
Yeah, well, I think it probably is different for different people. Some people seem to be a lot more in tune with that than others, and I think that's probably a giftedness. But I think the one thing to realize is that it's hard to listen if you're not paying attention and being quiet. You know what I mean? And so I don't think you need to feel the urge to just like, I'm going to prayer walk for the next 30 minutes and I'm going to pray for, nonstop every second of this entire walk.
Yeah.
It's like to realize to go slow, and to try to be attentive to the prompts of the Spirit, that if you feel like the Spirit is nudging you to go down this block, for whatever reason, then go down that block. It's okay to try to practice, if I can put it that way, to try to practice hearing the Spirit's voice, and to even ask the Lord, if you see somebody who is putzing around in the yard, to ask the Lord, how would you want me to approach this person?
Yeah.
I think that's a really important process, because otherwise you tend to do the same thing with everybody. And then it's really not being led by the Spirit. It's more just having like a pitch that you do.
Yeah.
And having a pitch is better than nothing. So I don't want to be critical of that. I'd rather have you use a pitch than do nothing.
Yeah.
But I think if you can be prepared with a pitch, but also be sensitive to what God might be saying or how he might be prompting, I think that can be much more powerful.
Yeah. Listening to the Holy Spirit guiding, like you said, like, oh, well, maybe let's go down this street or go down this street. And I'm thinking of when there was a documentary we watched a couple years ago about like when we were involved in what was going on in Greece. I remember hearing a story of a man who was prayer walking, and he felt like the Lord was like, go down this street. And when he went down this street, he met this lady, and this lady was like, I felt like the Lord told me to go down this street, and there was going to be a guy that was going to tell me about the man in white. And, it was like God was speaking to two separate people to bring them together, and it's like, but we have to be listening. And not to say that that's going to happen every single time. I don't know if that's ever happened to me, but.
No, but even like there's a difference between going back to our guy who's gardening in the front yard. There's a big difference between walking up to someone and being like, hey, can I pray for you? That's very different than walking up to someone, introducing yourself, asking them how long they lived in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? And like asking questions about who they are. Or I think about the same documentary you mentioned, the one guy who all he did was he offered to give rides to refugees to like doctor's offices and stuff like that. And he would just ask them their story and listen. And then in response to their story, he would pray for an opportunity to share a testimony or weave in a scripture or bring the gospel in. Yeah. As opposed to like they got in, he locks the door, child safety's on, and he's like, now you're going to hear the gospel. I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
One makes people into projects and one makes them into people.
Yeah. So that leads us to the last tip or.
So what we got so far, we have open eyes, praise,
go in groups, listen. And then the last thing is engage. Like actually talk to people. Mm-hmm. Like it's not like we are prayer walking. We are asking God for wisdom. We're asking God to soften the soil, but we're also asking God to bring people that we can talk to.
Yeah.
And so what would that look like if we're engaging? Let's kind of talk about maybe a couple different scenarios of what that looks like to engage people as we're prayer walking. So we're going through a neighborhood, we zigzag, and now we see another person walking their dog, and you and I are walking Kodiak.
Yeah.
Like what does that look like if they don't like go to the other side of the street because they think we're weird? But it's like, so what does that look like to engage someone while you're prayer walking?
Yeah. Well, I think like in that type of situation, the natural thing to do would be to ask if, like, oh, do you mind if our dogs meet each other? That kind of idea. And you go up and the dogs are doing their doggy handshake where they just smell each other's butts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then just to strike up a normal conversation. Oh, how long have you had your dog? What kind of dog is it? Do you live in this neighborhood? Asking basic questions, and you're seeing how they're responding. I think sometimes you can tell when people don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are super friendly. Mm-hmm. And normally what I'm doing is I'm trying to just see if they're going to give me some kind of open door to share something or to ask another question.
Yeah.
And I think for me, what comes naturally more to me is just to make a question. Like I'll tell one story. I was walking the dog around our church office one time, and the dog went over to the fence, and he was like sniffing because she had a dog as well. And their dog came over and my dog came over, and they were kind of sniffing at each other. And so they're doing that thing. And, I think I don't even remember. Oh, I think she had PA tags. I was like, well, where are you from? And she's like, oh, we're in Philly. And I was like, oh, well, do you live here? Do you summer family? Just having these questions. And I said, well, how often do you go back and forth? And then she said something like, well, I go back and forth a lot because my he's in prison. And so then I was like, oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. Do you mind me asking, like, can I pray? Do you mind if I pray for him? And then like she opened up, and she just opened up about her son and his, struggles with drugs, and she came over the fence, and I was able to like put my hand on her shoulder and pray for her and pray for her son, and that was the whole encounter. Nothing came from it except for the fact that maybe she left there going, God sees me.
Yeah.
God sees me in my pain.
Yeah.
And she was really thankful. You know what I mean?
And that's really, just thinking of the, the psychology of things, the spiritual side of things, that is really powerful for people to know and experience that God hears them.
Yeah. And I think along those same way, it's like, you don't need to feel this pressure that I have to share the gospel right now.
Yeah.
This lady lives near our office. I could technically see her every day if I wanted to walk the dog, but you're truly hearing her. God sees you. It doesn't really feel like God sees you if you're just bringing a pitch every time, but when you truly listen to someone, and you ask those questions and you treat them like they're a human being made in the image of God. Like you said, it's really powerful. God sees me. He hears my cries, even if they're faulty and not directed in the right place and come in the form of complaining and whatever it might be.
Yeah. And I think that's what we have to remember. All this stuff that we talk about with discipleship, and we when we're doing trainings and stuff, we remember that, the greatest commandment is to love God and love your neighbor. And that all of these like tools and principles and things we talk about as a part of disciple making has to be rooted in love. So if we want to, look at John 15 and we talk about the importance of abiding, and without God, we can do nothing, like we'll bear no fruit. But it's not like I need to stay connected to God so I can bear fruit, and I want to make disciples. So I need to like check the box or read my Bible every day. It's like, no, you need to be falling in love with God.
Yeah.
Like, don't go prayer walking just because you're like, I have to go prayer walking because that's what an obedient disciple does. Go prayer walking because you want to talk to the Lord and you want to see people fall in love with him, and you love your neighbor. You care about that their son is struggling or their wife has cancer or whatever. Like you care, like do it because you care. You love your neighbor. And it's like, I think that's what sets us apart. Like, I don't want to like knock Jehovah's Witnesses, but it's like, we don't have a pitch where we're like, hey, we just want to tell you about Jesus. Like,
right. Well, and I think it's the idea, like, go for a walk because it's good for you.
Yeah.
And you should probably take a brain break and get off the computer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And two, leave your phone in your car or in your pocket and don't look at it. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to find, if you're walking and you don't have your phone and you love Jesus, your mind is naturally going to be drawn to prayer. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But if your phone is there, you'll be distracted. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I find that if I walk the dog without my phone, I'm much more likely to look around and I'm like, oh, look, a squirrel's nest. Hey, look, there's an eagle up there, by the airport. And it's like, whereas if I have my phone, I'm like trying to send a voice memo to someone. All of a sudden I'm like stepping in dog doo because I'm not even paying attention.
Yeah. Totally
different environment, totally different experience. Yeah. But like if I'm walking, which is good for me, and I'm disconnected from technology, I'm going to be drawn to prayer anyway, because I love Jesus, and I think that's what you're saying, as opposed to like, hey, we're going to go door to door on this day. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's a place for that too, but it's birthed out of relationship.
Yep. So let
me just read this verse real quick.
Yeah, let's read that verse.
Because it reminded me when you were saying Romans 15:2, it says, let each of us please his neighbor for his good to build him up.
That's great.
And just thinking about that idea, it's like, well, why should I prayer walk? For your neighborhood's good, to build your neighborhood up in Jesus, that kind of idea.
So let's, think about that passage. And what was it? That was Romans 15.
Romans 15:2.
Romans 15:2. And we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're just going to kind of finish up looking at maybe some practical, like how to plan your next prayer walk. And then maybe we could tell some like, some wins or some funny stories from times when we were prayer walking.
Sure.
So I don't want to say fails and wins, but just funny stories.
Wins and funny stories.
Wins and funny stories. So we'll be right back. Thank you. All right. Well, welcome back. And we are talking today about prayer walking and how that relates to disciple making and the disciple making process. And let's just talk about, you're listening to this podcast, you're interested in prayer walking. We give you some tips. This weekend, you want to go prayer walking.
Tip number 1. Ready? We can go back and forth. Is that what we're gonna do?
Well, we talked about the tips, but let's plan it.
Yeah,
let's help
planning
someone.
tips.
Let's help someone plan their prayer walking trip this weekend.
All right. Planning tip number 1. This is unscripted. I'm going to give you a tip. You're going to give a tip.
Oh, okay.
All right. My tip is this. If you already go for a walk, just turn it into a prayer walk.
Yeah.
That's tip number 1.
Yeah.
You have a dog? All right, great. You just have, now you have 2 prayer walks a day.
Yeah. I would say bring a friend, call a friend and invite them. So say
my dog is man's best friend.
You say 9 a.m. we're going to go prayer walking, and I would say set a time and a location. So just say we are going to prayer walk, this neighborhood by the ferry, and we're going to take an hour and just zigzag through the neighborhood.
Okay, so we have take advantage. So I'll summarize mine by saying habit stacking. You're already going for a walk, turn into a prayer walk.
Okay.
Yours was pick a time and a place and a person.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I'm putting myself on the spot now. Time, place, person. I would say keep track of where you're going.
Okay.
That's a tip. Keep track where you're going. And if you go to Revolve, the church that we go to, we have these giant 8-foot maps of our county printed out. And so you keep track of it. You could also use an app like Map My Run or something like that. And then you can mark it down. So the goal is to saturate your neighborhood, saturate the county in prayer walking. And then once you do that, you go through again.
I would say bring maybe like a notepad or some business cards with you if you have business cards. So if you do meet someone and they seem spiritually open and they enjoyed you praying for them or with them, give them a business card or write your phone number down that they can, follow up, or you could get their number to follow up.
It's good. My tip is bring new people. So like always mix it up. So that like somebody who's never done it before, you bring them with you. So don't just go with the same person every time, but try to like challenge yourself. Maybe, a different person every other week or every month or whatever it might be. Or like, I'm going to invite a different person to do this.
Yeah.
So you can try to multiply the process.
Yeah. So you can invite, say you're going to go every Saturday, for 2 Saturdays, you bring Bob, and then you say, okay, Bob, next week, I want you to invite a friend, and then you're going to go to the Villas and you're going to go over there, and I'm going to invite somebody else. So you're multiplying the process, and you're training others on how to do it. That's a good one. Any other? I feel like next time we do this, we should do like a rapid fire. Like 1 minute. As many tips as possible.
Any other tips?
But it's just going out and doing it. And it's one of those things where the first time you go, if you're going with, if you know someone who does prayer walk, ask them if you could go with them, because it's nice to kind of learn from others. But if it's you and a friend, you've never done it before, it's just a matter of getting out and doing it. And the first couple times it's a little weird, and you're like, I'm walking and praying.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that was kind of like weird for me at first, even just like walking and
He kept kneeling and closing his eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. There was no meal afterwards. Like usually when I kneel and I pray, there's like a meal.
I thought of one more, which is for those of you who are like, man, I don't know. This is an all else fails. If you're prayer walking and you see someone and you don't know how to approach the conversation, you could always just walk up to them and say, hey, me and my buddy are praying for the community. Do you have any prayer requests, or how would you advise us to pray for this community? What do you think the community needs?
Yeah. And
so that way, if you don't know how to bring the conversation up, that's something we've said, hey, my friend and I are praying for the community as we walk. How do you think we should pray for the community?
Yeah.
What do you think are the community's biggest needs?
That's a great
if
icebreaker.
They say something like, drugs, you say, all right, well, we're going to pray for that. Do you mind if we pray with you? And then just pray right on the spot.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of see, where it goes.
Yeah. And that's a really good one is praying that's a big part of praying, is praying right on the spot. Don't say like, oh yeah, I'm going to pray for that when I get home, but like legit pray right then and there for that person. Just, it's a 20-second prayer. And again, that's another one of those things where it's like that person may have never heard an actual authentic prayer before. And it's like that's where we trust, as we talked about in the very beginning of the show, of there's a spiritual battle that's happening. And that just that first prayer, like a real prayer that someone's ever heard, who knows what power what that holds in their life.
Yeah.
So, but it's, just getting out there and doing it. So let's talk about, so we got people, they're going, they're ready to go. Let's maybe talk about some prayer walking stories as we start winding down. Maybe like a win or a loss, or like where have we seen like, hey, this was a fruitful experience, and this was like, we're just gonna tell you this happened. It was really weird, and just be ready. So I'm gonna start with a win because I think it's good to start with a win. So I live about, it's like 2.5 miles, 3 miles from the church office. And I have, I got an e-bike this summer. I ride it back and forth. And for like the first half of the summer, I was just listening to music and just kind of riding. It's like a 5 or 10 minute ride. And then I started thinking I should use this time to prayer walk while I'm riding. Like I'm going back and forth on the same street a couple times a week. I'm just going to pray for opportunities to meet people, just pray for specific businesses. You're passing all these businesses every day, and like just praying and utilizing that time, something I was already doing. And I was by myself. I didn't bring a friend. Like I didn't have like Corey on the handlebars.
Sure.
So I was just by myself. But did that for about a month. And then kind of like this sequence of events happened where I actually saw this guy that I'd interacted with before on that street while I was praying on my bike, asking God, like, give me people to talk to, like, as I'm prayer walking. And I meet this guy and I go, okay, God, if you want me to go talk to this guy, like I felt like the Spirit was saying, go pull over and talk to this guy. I talked to this guy, and this guy is, I'm trying to like, cause now he's the end of the story is he started to come to our church a few weeks ago. But engaging with this guy, I prayed with him, asking him stories about his life, like, hey, what's going on in your life? Like,
so
legit
funny.
Showing him love. And it's like there was a month of praying before that interaction on that street, asking God, hey, give me someone to talk to, soften the soil here. And then after a month, I meet this guy and have a conversation with him, hear how he's doing, what's he got struggling. I pray with him, and then that's it. And then I don't hear from this guy for a couple months. And then like 2 months ago, he shows up at our church, and he's been coming for the last few weeks. And who knows what that's going to do in his life. But the story started 6 months ago.
Yeah.
With prayer walking, and it's like, so you may not go out and prayer walk and see fruit right away, but it, like we said earlier, it's softening the soil that you might see fruit from it in 6 months or a year.
Sure.
So that would be kind of like a win, I would say. So what would be, maybe, do you have any stories of?
Well, I'll give one win, and then I'll give a funny story.
Okay.
So, an example of this is, which goes beyond just prayer walking, is eventually once you prayer walk for long enough, you realize that this should be your attitude all the time. And so, I'll give you one example. At the grocery store, this guy was in the middle of winter, maybe 2 years ago, and he wanted to push our cart back so he could get the quarter. You know what I mean? You guys probably met the guy. He's all the time. And so normally I would just be like, yeah, here you go. But this time I was like, hey, yes, that's a problem. That's fine. And I was like, do you have a coat? Like, and he was like, oh, I'm all right. And so I took my coat off, and I gave him my coat, and I gave him my hat. And then, and it was cold out, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how he wasn't colder. And I just said, can I pray for you? And I prayed for him. I think I went inside and I brought him like a loaf of bread, some cold cuts, that kind of stuff. And so it was just a natural engagement when I was already going about my life, but the same type of thing you would do if you were prayer walking, you know what I mean? But and nothing came from it. But what did come from it was at the time, she was probably 7 years old. My daughter was with me, and she still talks about it. And so you think about things like that, where it's like, well, I don't know if anything ever came from this situation with this guy, but the person who was with me was incredibly impacted by it. And so you realize that even if you're like, oh man, well, nothing, we didn't even lead anybody to the Lord, like, but the person you brought with you, they might be completely moved by what you're doing. And that might be part of the Lord's plan, you know?
Yeah. One of the things we talk about is going to, you know, you're going to pick a neighborhood to go to. And we had this great idea to go to, was it Stone Harbor?
Avalon.
So,
That was Stone Harbor.
So if you're familiar with our area, if you're listening to this in Cape May County, Stone Harbor is a more affluent area. And then maybe North Cape May or the Villas or Rio Grande is where we were prayer walking a lot at the time. And we went to Stone Harbor, and it was really funny. It was like, I would say, you know, maybe 30% of your interactions are like, people are like, yeah, you know, pray for the community or pray for drugs or, you know, whatever, pray for the war or
anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
World peace.
But it was like almost 100% of the people were like,
no, get away from me.
Get away from me.
Yeah.
And I just remember that being like really funny, like just all day prayer walking. You know, we went for an hour, probably 2 hours, I guess, and having like absolutely no one want to be prayed for. No one was interested. But at the same time, like, we're not discouraged in that. We're just praying that the spirit of apathy, the spirit of greed, you know, be broken in that area because people obviously hearts were really hardened.
Yeah. And then I think some other realities, you know, funny story is people don't want to talk to you, you know what I mean? And I remember being in New York City and prayer walking with a guy who was Hispanic, and I went up and tried to talk with him, and he basically was like, no hablo inglés. And so then I started speaking to him in Spanish, and he's like, I gotta go.
Did he say that in English?
Yes. Yeah.
He's like, I'm out of here, bro. Peace out.
He just didn't want to talk, and that's okay. Like, you don't sweat it. There's other times I've been prayer walking and trying to talk with someone, and the guy's like practically nodding out as I'm talking with him, and you're like, oh, this guy's totally fried right now.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, yeah. You start talking with a guy and he's totally, you know, drunk or whatever it might be, and you know, that stuff happens too.
So can we tell a story that happened? I don't want to say the name, but that happened in front of the Wawa with someone that you were walking with. Can you tell that story without like protecting the innocent?
Sure. So I was.
So this is, you know, like, you're having conversations with people. You're looking for people, and you're like, let me just start talking to these people and like get some information about them before I start praying for them.
Yes, and
that can go south.
So I had said to this a friend of mine, it was one of his first times prayer walking. He's experienced now, and I said, you know, like, just ask them, you know, what do you think the needs of the community are? How do you think I should pray for the community? And so he went up to this guy in front of the Wawa, and he's like, hey man, like, we're just praying for the community. Like, what do you think the needs of the community are? And the guy was like, well, you know, I guess there's a lot of drugs. And my friend was like, kind of drugs?
What are we talking about?
Yeah, what are we talking about?
Molly's,
and the guy just kind of sat there, and then he went to like a list of like 20
like slang
words for drugs from like the 70s. What are we talking about? Mary Jane, crankers, fizz giggers, lollipops, and he's just going off. And then and this guy was like probably in his 20s.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he must have been with his mom, and his mom came out of the Wawa, and she hears us basically asking this guy where heroin, we can get drugs, blackball, meth, crank. And she's like, what on earth are you talking to my son about? And then we're backpedaling because it totally sounded like we were trying to ask him where we could buy drugs.
Yeah. So
don't do that.
Yeah. So, but like with all things, you learn. It's you kind of have to laugh.
Fizz giggers, lollipops, Mary Jane.
Oh man,
whiz bangs.
Isn't that like Joe Dirt? Like that movie Joe Dirt when he's like talking about fireworks. It's the same thing. He's like, we got mollies, dollies, shooters, booters, all those things. But yeah, so we look, you know, think of biblically, we think of the disciples or the apostles when, you know, they're persecuted, they're beat, and they rejoice that in their obedience.
Sure.
And they are, that's what we do. We're going out, we're being obedient. Deuteronomy 6 says to talk about them as you're going, as you're laying down. And that's what we're doing. We're being obedient. We love God, and the way we show our love for him is going out and talking about him. So
just lay down in the street,
Yep.
keep talking about him like
Yep.
Ezekiel.
So that's our challenge for you this week is to, I'm going to put a download link in the description of kind of like a guide of, some things to pray about, some tips, all the stuff that we talked about, but in a PDF that you can download. And, but just, I would challenge you to go out this week and pick a friend, pick an area, pick a time, and just go and do it. And, do it for an hour, do it for 30 minutes, whatever.
That's a big deal.
It doesn't have to be like 6 hours. We're going to, cover 100 miles. Just go out for 30 minutes and start there. And I think you're really going to be blessed.
And if you go to our church, write it down and mark the map this coming Sunday.
Yeah, our goal is to cover the whole Cape May County map, highlight it. You said 8 foot? It's a 12-foot map, bro.
12.
We got a 12-foot map of Cape May
Can't
County.
even reach the top.
Nope. You got to get a friend. That's why you got to bring a friend so they can get on your shoulder so they can highlight up in Woodbine. That's what you got to do. The real top part.
Man, I tell you what.
Yep.
Just highlight it. First yellow, then orange.
Yep.
Then green.
Yep. So.
Then Jesus comes back.
Then Jesus comes back. There we go. 2033. We're waiting. So, all right. Thanks so much for listening, watching, subscribe, tell your friends. And if you go out prayer walking, let us know if you know us, or put a comment and let us know some wins or some trials that you came against. And we'd love to hear about it.
Or something funny, especially something funny.
Yeah, we love to hear the funny stuff.
Yeah. So it's actually more important than the wins.
That's not true. That's not true. Have a great week. See you soon.